LeBron James with no regard for human life.
70 points for Devin Booker.
Trae Young, ice cold, delivers a three.
Oh, what a shot from Curry! Down to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
Hello and welcome to the All NBA podcast presented by the Courtside View. Now let's meet our All NBA players. Starting at point guard, we have Jules.
Hello.
The shooting guard, Jasmine.
Hey.
Small forward, Joel.
What's up, y'all?
Power forward is yours truly, Christian. And now we have our center, Angie.
What's going on, guys? You can check out more of what the crew and I have to say by following our Twitters down in the podcast description below.
All right. Now that you've met us, time for Jules to take it away. What you got?
So for the first episode of the All NBA podcast, it's kind of late in the season, but I think that we should start off with our top 5 playoff performers. So at number 1, I got KD. Even though they did have an early exit, I think he did everything he possibly could to help the Nets get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but I definitely have KD at number 1. Number 2, I have Trae Young. I know that might be like a little controversial because like there are players that have played better, but I think Trae Young has done really well with what he's had. And I mean, getting his team to the Eastern Conference Finals is something that no one at the beginning of the season thought was possible. So he's at number 2. Number 3, I have Kawhi. I mean, coming back from being down 2-0 2 times, maybe possibly 3 times, is super, super impressive. And that was a lot of his doing. At number 4, I have Devin Booker. That's kind of self-explanatory. He's been killing it this postseason. They are kind of struggling right now with the Clippers, but hopefully they can get it together to go to their first finals. And at number 5, I think you've got to have Giannis, who clearly has just been killing it this entire postseason, beating the Heat in 4, beating the Nets in 7, and they're looking really strong and looking like they're about to beat the Hawks and advance to the finals. And honorable mentions, I have Paul George, Chris Paul, and Joel Embiid.
All right, I could say mine next. So for my number 1, I actually have Devin Booker. This is his first playoffs, and I think he's just done like phenomenal. I think he's truly proved himself, and you know, I think he deserves that number 1. I also have Trae Young, also his first playoffs, but I don't think anyone expected the Hawks to make it this far, and I do think that yes, the Hawks have a very cohesive team, which is what led them to this point. But I think we have to give credit where credit is due. Trae Young has done amazing. Luka, I was so sad to see the Mavericks lose, but he really was the glue of that team. He was the man on the court getting it done. And even though they didn't make it past the first round, I'm hoping for the best. 4th, I have Kevin Durant. I mean, look, we all saw that the Nets kind of started falling apart with injuries, but Kevin Durant held out till the end. So we got to give him that. And then I have Joel Embiid, who played through an injury. So I'm going to have to give him that too.
Right. And then for me personally, it was so hard for me to rank them, but for 5 that stood out to me, one of them would be Kawhi Leonard for sure. I mean, the dude bowled out in the first 2 rounds. And to be honest, you know, it sucks because I am rooting for the Suns to not only beat LA, but to win the championship overall. But I feel like had Kawhi been healthy for this series, the Clippers would have won. But so there's that. And then I also have Devin Booker too, because as you mentioned, Jasmine, like for someone who's in the playoffs for the first time, I mean, he's doing incredible stuff right now, especially in this conference finals when he didn't even have Chris Paul for those first 2 games, but he was still able to take care of business. So I have Devin Booker as well. I also had Giannis, but since he was mentioned, I'll also give a shout out to Chris Middleton as well. I honestly don't want to, being the Heat fan that I am, but I feel like Chris Middleton has had an interesting playoffs because the first round he bowled out against the Heat. The second round against Brooklyn, those first 2 games wasn't really his best. And I can tell you that because my Twitter timeline was flooded with tweets talking about how Chris Middleton should go to the Shanghai Sharks. So yeah, there's that. But he was able to turn it around, and that overall played a huge part in why they were able to beat Brooklyn and why they're now 2 wins away from going to the finals. And then there's Kevin Durant. That game 5 against Milwaukee in the second round was just amazing. I've never seen one of those type of performances ever. I mean, you just got to give it to him. And, for him to have done what he did with James Harden, who was on one leg, and for Kyrie to be out with his injury, I mean, it's just impressive. And it just shows you why he's one of the best players in the NBA right now. Not in the NBA, but in the world. And then last but not least, you have Damian Lillard. Obviously, some people might find this interesting because he's the only person I've listed here who was a first-round exit. But the way how he played in that series against Denver was amazing. That one time he had the 50-point triple-double was crazy. And honestly, if he had more help, they probably would have beaten Denver. I know one thing is that CJ McCollum isn't really the sidekick he needs. They sort of need to move on from him. But yeah, overall, those are my 5 guys. And yeah, I've been impressed by what they've been doing in this playoff run.
My 5 guys are a little different. I mean, the way that I look at it, I look at individual performance, how much they help their team, and then ultimately how far do they get, which is why my number 6 honorable mention is Damian Lillard. He played out of his mind in the first round, as Joel just said, 50-point triple-double, absolute insanity. It's a shame that they didn't end up going to the second round. But rounding out my top 5, at number 5, I have Luka Doncic. That boy is a bucket. No matter what the Clippers were throwing at him, it looks like he was making Swiss cheese out of them. You could not guard Luka. Anytime he got the mismatch on Zubac, it looked like he just started licking his lips because he got every single bucket on him. Luka was outstanding in these playoffs. And even though he got a first-round exit, he took the series to 7. And he was almost by himself, even though good contributions from Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of helped propel his play. It's just unfortunate Luka did have that first-round exit. But if this is a sign of what's to come from Luka, I'm very excited. Up next at number 4, I have Devin Booker. So this is his first playoff run, his first taste of playoff action. He took Phoenix all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and they're up 3-2 right now on the Clippers. Hopefully, Devin Booker wants to continue his playoff run. He'll close out in Game 6 and not let the Clippers force a Game 7. But just the way Devin Booker has been playing, he's drawn a lot of comparisons to Kobe Bryant, the way that he likes to take his fades. And he really had that sort of coming out when they played those 8 games in the bubble when the Suns went 8-0. So Devin Booker himself, I mean, even if you look at it, a couple of years ago, he dropped 70 points in a game. And that's, most recently the highest point total ever scored in a game. So it's good for him. At number 3, instead of Giannis, I have Chris Middleton. In the biggest moments for Milwaukee, when Milwaukee needed to get the shots, they weren't going to Giannis. They weren't even trusting Giannis on the free throw line. Instead, they went to Chris Middleton to hit the threes or the mid-ranges. And I hail from Brooklyn. As a Nets fan, I have to say, Middleton was the villain of that series for us. The way that he would just be able to quash our runs when we were getting to within 5 points in Game 6. He's just an ultimate, clutch shooter. He hasn't been a consistent playoff performer, but when he's on, he really does help his team. At number 2, I have another third year alongside Luka Doncic. I have Trae Young, the Ice Trae Atlanta buckets getter. He is something sensational to watch. He's not uber consistent, but he has dropped 50 points. He has led his 5th seed to beat the number 1 seed in 7 games, which is something you definitely can't take for granted. See, he was able to win a 7-game series against the 1 seed, so I have to put him over Luka, obviously. And just the fact that he even took the Hawks this far after no one was really considering them contenders going into these playoffs, it's just fantastic to watch. And of course, at my number 1, completely unbiased decision, I have Kevin Durant. Breaking records like nobody's business. A 49-point triple-double. I think the stat was 49, 17, and 11. That's the highest point total in a game with those specific stats. And then he ended up scoring the most points in a Game 7 in NBA history with 48. So just watching him play, the way that most players wouldn't be able to guard him because of how high his release point is, his height, his shooting, his dribbling, all combined into one outstanding offensive player. And the unfortunate circumstance of the injuries did hinder his playoff run. But at the end of the day, I got to put KD at number 1.
All right, so for my top 5, it really just depends on the person's opinion. So I feel like it's a bit of a controversial type topic, but I'm just going to give my personal opinion. So for number one, I have Kevin Durant, and it is no doubt that he is easily one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA right now. And there's really no discussion about it, considering everything he did for Brooklyn, with James Harden being out for some time, and then Kyrie unfortunately getting injured a bit early in the series, which unfortunately led them to get eliminated in the second round versus Milwaukee. But there's no doubt about it that Kevin Durant certainly carried the Brooklyn Nets to a game 7 and dropped a 40-point triple-double in overtime. To be honest, if his foot wasn't on the line, it would have gone much differently. I think that's something we can all agree on. But yeah, it is what it is. And I feel like they're going to come out much stronger. And Kevin Durant is one of the most dominant players, in my opinion, in the NBA. So, and at number 2 comes Kawhi Leonard. Considering all he's done for the Clippers, beating the Dallas Mavericks in game 7, which nobody thought would happen, to then beating the Utah Jazz, the number 1 overall seed in the league, that progressed them to their first Western Conference Finals appearance ever in the entire history of their organization. So it's no doubt about it that Kawhi Leonard has certainly done a lot of things for the Los Angeles Clippers. But then again, sadly, he is out with a semi-torn ACL from what I've heard, and he is on a last game decision whether he is going to return in game 6 versus the Phoenix Suns, who are very trophy hungry to make it to the NBA Finals. In my opinion, I have them winning it all, the Phoenix Suns, I mean. So it's just a matter of how they're going to get it done and what assets are going to be able to get the job done for the Clippers, considering the asset that is missing, which is Kawhi Leonard. And at number 3, I have Devin Booker. He is surely not a player to underestimate, especially in a time like this. To drop a 40-point triple-double in your first Western Conference Finals appearance at such a young age versus such a stacked Los Angeles Clippers team, that is surely not something to take advantage of. And I'm sure the Clippers going forward know how much of a stacked player Devin Booker truly is and how much he really contributes to the Phoenix Suns alongside Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, all those other great contributors. And at number 4, I have Ice Trae Young himself. He is one of the most fiercest players in the playoffs currently. And trust me, there's a lot of more fierce playoff players, but he really stands out for someone who has been underestimated his entire basketball career. Just for him to go out and do the things he's done for Atlanta and bring them as far as they have come to the Eastern Conference Finals, and to really show us what they're really made of. If you would have told me that Trae Young would lead his team to the Eastern Conference Finals, I would have told you you're full of it, because now look where he's at. And I would have eaten my words because of that, because nobody knew that the Atlanta Hawks were going to go as far as they did. So I give Trae Young his flowers for that, but obviously there are a lot more contributors that helped him along the way, such as John Collins, Clint Capella, Kevin Huerter, aka Red Velvet. So, and then at number 5, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. And it is no doubt that him and Milwaukee have had their fair share of unfortunate events, such as last season in the second round where they were almost swept by the Miami Heat. And so clearly they took that into accountability, got the proper assets, did the work that they needed to get done. And look, they swept the Miami Heat in the first round, and now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals working their A's off to potentially eliminate the Atlanta Hawks. And from what it looks like, it could potentially happen. And me personally, I have the Atlanta Hawks winning the Eastern Conference Finals, but anything can happen. And for my honorable mentions, I have DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul, and Paul George. And you could throw Joel Embiid in there, considering he did play injured. But I feel like there's a lot of different honorable mentions you can add in there, but those are just my personal opinions.
Hey, I'm Lola, the Six Miss, just chiming in from time to time. I just want to say that I agree with all of your picks, especially Trae Young and Chris Middleton. Trae came out ready to fight with no expectations, yet far exceeded it while being super confident through it all. And being as young as he is and putting his team on his back like that, as he has been doing, is so phenomenal and inspirational. And for Chris Middleton, he came back from failing last year and has really improved and been that player for the Bucks. Giannis is always going to be Giannis, but Chris's improvement is what I really think is why they've been as successful as they've been. I also put Devin Booker and KD for putting the team on their back due to injuries with CP3 and Harden and Kyrie, and Paul George for leading the team the way he has done after losing Kawhi. I mean, leadership matters in the playoffs, and he has done that perfectly. And finally, getting the Clippers to the Western Conference Finals. I also want to give a quick shout out to Reggie Jackson. He's been a consistent scorer for the Clippers and made some crucial shots for them down the stretch. They'd likely not be in the playoffs right now without him.
All right, so I don't know about anyone else, but this has been a really fun playoffs to watch. Like I've enjoyed pretty much every single series, especially on the East. I think the outcomes of the East were blowing my mind because it didn't go any way that I thought it was going to go. I don't know about you guys, but the Western Conference semifinals, we had the Suns and the Nuggets. That was a complete sweep, which was surprising because, you know, Jokic is the MVP. So I kind of thought that they were going to win at least one, but it was a complete sweep, which was great for the Suns. They had a lot of off time to relax, which could work for or against them. And then we had the Jazz and Clippers. I think Angie mentioned that series went 6 games, 4-2, which was I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really watch that one. I kind of thought that the Clippers were gonna win. If anyone else wants to chime in and say, but I did think the Jazz were gonna underperform. That's just what I felt going into this playoffs. And then for Eastern Conference semifinals, this was a really interesting one. The 76ers and the Hawks. I think most people had the 76ers favored, but it ended up going the Hawks' way 4-3. And the same with the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks. Honestly, I didn't understand most of it, but from my belief at least, I think that if we had a very healthy big three, that it would have gone a little bit differently, but we are here now. That series was 4-3, and now we're in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference finals. So it's Suns and Clippers, Bucks and Hawks. The Suns and the Clippers are at 3-2, and the Bucks Hawks are 2-1. So I want to know, who do you guys think is going to take it? Right now I have Suns and Bucks, but I'm hoping Suns and Hawks.
I also think it would be Suns and Bucks at the end. I mean, Hawks are a really good team, but Bucks have proven to be able to beat that Nets team. I mean, they were injured, but Chris Middleton has been playing really well, and Giannis as well. I think at the end of the day, the experience is going to put them over the Hawks, and the Suns are they have way more players than the Clippers, and the Clippers have Kawhi being injured. So I think the Suns are definitely going to take it at the end, and it'll be Suns and the Bucks.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, from what I'm getting, the Bucks went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, so they know what they did wrong in the first time. This is the Hawks' first time around with this team, so I think they're kind of going into like uncharted territory in a way, because the Bucks knew what their mistakes were last year and they improved upon it. We've obviously seen they've come so far. They swept the Miami Heat and they beat practically a favorite, the Nets, and made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think it's a very good chance that they're going to make it to the finals.
I mean, I would really like to see a Hawks Suns finals. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I really want to see Trae Young on the biggest stage, the finals. I mean, he loved the villain role at Madison Square Garden. He loved it in Philly. Unfortunately, he's injured right now. I think he's questionable for tonight's game. So hopefully, he'll be okay and he can get through it, and hopefully he can move on to the finals. I think that'll be super fun. The Hawks team, super fun to watch. I am kind of a Sixers fan. I love Tease. So it did hurt to watch Trae Young eliminate them. But I can't be mad about it because I really do respect his game. And I really do like how he embraces that villain role. On the other side, the Suns, once again, just like a fun team to watch. Booker, so much fun. Like he makes Luka-esque shots where you're like, there's no way it can go in, and then it ends up going in. And the way that Chris Paul distributes the ball and just makes beautiful basketball is just also a lot of fun to watch. So I'm hoping for a Suns-Hawks finals, but I wouldn't be mad if we got Clippers-Hawks either.
I just think those two crowds, those games would be so much fun to go to. But yeah, I mean, you look into the Suns crowd when they were down before, like they were cheering that entire time. And Atlanta is such a fun city. I think that would be a really fun finals. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would like it to. But right now, I think I still have the Bucks making it out.
To see a Trae Young and Devin Booker matchup would certainly be one to go down in the history books. That'd be such a fun matchup. Two electric potential superstar talents. So
I mean, the Hawks have been in this situation before, like with the number one seed. So like, I know they're down right now, but like I have no doubts that they can 100% force a game 6, force a game 7
They're not
to
going to
win
go
the
down
series.
without a fight. They're not going to go down.
No.
Yeah.
And
I
if
mean,
they
it's-
force a game 7, it can go either way because Trae Young, you know him. He's
I know
not scared of
people-
the ball.
we're only at game, game 4 now?
I think
Like,
the
they
Bucks
gotta-
are up
Game 4.
2-1.
It's
Yeah, it's
2-1,
game
so
4.
they're going into game 4 versus Suns Clippers are going into game 6. So anything could happen, really.
And I know a lot of people contribute the Hawks' success to Trae Young, but in reality, their coach really turned it around for them. I remember going to
Yeah.
the Heat game, the game before they
Nate.
fired their coach. And so ever since then, they have just done a complete 180 and just really contribute the success to the coach. But Trae Young is one of the main reasons why they're at where they are now.
It's such a well-structured team. Like, and
But they have a good-
you could tell like when Trey was not playing good and they still won the game. They can rely on other people besides their star.
Like, the Sixers didn't lose to the Hawks. The Sixers lost to Kevin Herter.
Red Velvet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Sixers lost to Kevin
Kayvon,
Herter.
Herter.
Trey was what? He was like 5 of some crazy number. And they still won. Like, the Hawks have a good like supporting cast around them, which
And I also feel like Trae Young's comfortability really switched when the coach switched. He wasn't too happy with that last coach. And I feel like the coach has a lot to do with their success. It's just like the leadership and everything else. That team is well structured, but you also need leadership when you have a young team. And I feel like the coach has done a tremendous job with that.
yeah,
Right,
I feel
Nate
like it's
McMillan's
also
a very
letting them-
defensive-minded coach.
I just
I
saw
feel-
a stat that said Nate McMillan with the Hawks went 27-11, and then Lloyd Pierce, their ex-head coach, went 14-20. That's crazy.
I
just
think what
feel
Nate
like their
McMillan brings to the
current
table-
coach is I just feel like the current coach is just letting them do what they do best. And like I've heard a lot that like winning teams don't make you do any more than like what you're good at. And I think that when McMillan came in, he was like, all right, Trey, you do what you're good at. Gallinari, he's actually killing it this playoffs. He's doing really well. And like everyone's just doing what they're best at and coming together to do it together, which is really, I think, making a really good playoff run for them.
His plays have been so good in this run. Like, there's been some really smooth plays. I've enjoyed watching that team.
Atlanta's just a very youthful team, I think. You know, with Nate McMillan, he's kind of like a new coach. He's very defensive minded, and he does bring the defense to Atlanta. So it's not just the shooting, because obviously with Trae Young, you know, you're either going to get like a 40-point night, 6 of 8 from 3, or you're going to get not so great night. But it's really John Collins who's excelled under Nate McMillan. I remember there's this one specific play where Trae Young threw it off the backboard to John Collins, game 1. That was in the third quarter. And I said specifically, like, John Collins just baptized Brooke Lopez, and everyone starts calling him like John Collins the Baptist. Like, so it's just stuff like that. So if you ask me who I want to see in the finals, I'd really like to see the Phoenix Suns, because they're at full strength, they're healthy, and it's a great chance for Chris Paul to get a ring. And then I'd also like to see the young Atlanta Hawks, because watching them is just so much fun. And who I think I'd actually see, though, is probably Phoenix and Milwaukee, because Milwaukee does have the framework. They've been a pretty steady team for the past couple of years, you know, making the conference finals and the semifinals. So that's pretty much who we're going to see.
Right. Like, you know, overall, I mean, the playoffs have just been kind of crazy. You know, I'm looking back at this past round. I mean, you know, Philly and Atlanta, I'm sure no one expected Atlanta to win that series. But obviously, Trae Young and the GOAT himself, Solomon Hill, carried them all the way. And
Yes,
then,
sir.
of course, you got to give credit to guys like Kevin Herter and all of them. Like, they're ultimately the underdogs right now. And I do want them to beat Milwaukee. I don't know if they can, but we'll see what happens from there. And then, you know, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, I was rooting for Brooklyn to win this because I just want to see how much damage they could do as a fully healthy team. So the fact that we couldn't see that with James Harden being on one leg and then Kyrie just simply being out, it really sucks overall. But yeah, shout outs to the Bucks for getting the job done. and it looks like they might go to the finals because honestly, they're up 2-1. You know, right now, Chris Middleton's looking really good. Same thing with Giannis. I think they'll probably win the next 2 games and maybe win in 5 or at least 6. So we'll see what happens there.
Like
And
I
then
said earlier.
Utah,
No, you
and
can
then
go on.
Utah and Clippers. Like, look how that series is went. I mean, I just really don't like Jazz fans like that. And I don't think I've really met a handful of Jazz fans. So yeah, Clippers were overall the better team, and Kawhi's just a freaking beast. Make it simple. And then Denver, Phoenix, you know, Suns in 4, just as the wise man himself once said. So yeah, and then you know, overall, moving on, and then we're looking into this current conference finals. I do have Milwaukee winning, and then regarding Clippers and Suns, I really think that if Kawhi had been healthy, the Clippers would have probably won this series. And while there are reports that apparently there's a chance that Kawhi could come back for this game 6, even if he was to, I don't think he could be the same guy that he was throughout the playoffs, but we'll see. But until then, I still have the Suns taking care of business in game 6. So there's that. And then Suns, Bucks in the finals is my prediction. And I say Heat legend Jay Crowder, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul win the chip for Arizona. So yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
If you would have told me that Trae Young would beat the Philadelphia 76ers and lead his team to the Eastern Conference Finals, I would have told you you're full of it. I said this earlier. And the fact that he had 48 points in his debut, that's more than any other player in a conference final game.
Right. And then, like, you know, I want to then hit on another topic. And I just want to, like, hit on NBA news real quick. It's kind of interesting what's been going on in the league. We've seen a lot of head coaching changes and all that. I don't really care too much about coaching changes. The 2 that really stood out to me was probably Rick Carlisle going to the Pacers. I think, you know, he's been with Dallas for so long and he did such a good job there. You know, even though, let's face it, they did go like 10 years without winning a playoff series, but that's none of my business. I mean, I can't blame that on Carlisle, but specifically on the players they put around Luka. I mean, come on, Kristaps Porzingis, what the hell? I mean, that dude's, I don't know what's up with that dude. And then after that, you got from Portland, they went and got Chauncey Billups. You know, I mean, I think it's a good addition for them. Obviously, this was a guy that Dame wanted. I've never seen this much controversy come from a pickup of a coach, you know, and it looks like, I don't know if Dame's probably ready to leave based on those reports we've been hearing from Chris Haynes, who has been tied with Damian Lillard. So anything you hear from Chris Haynes is 100% the truth, but we'll see more from what happens there as things develop. And then, you know, looking at the other news, you know, I know I've already hit on Kawhi, but the historic performances we've seen, I mean, the things that we've seen from players like Kevin Durant and all them, it's just simply great players doing great things. I mean, we've seen it from guys like KD, LeBron, and all of them. So to see Kevin Durant do what he did, specifically in that game 5, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, what else can you say? That's what a superstar is. And then overall, you know, looking at some of the news, I want to like talk about a few other things. You know, going back to the Damian Lillard situation, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Will he leave? Will he not? I personally don't know. You know, I know there's going to be a lot of teams that's ready to make a move for him. And we'll see, you know, because it's crazy because he's always been so loyal to Portland. So to see all of this happens, it is very shocking because a part of me sort of felt that he'd finish his career with Portland. You know, I feel like when some players aren't in a winning situation, you can maybe see sometime down the line they could be on another team. But for Dame, it's always been kind of different for me. So to see all of this go down, you know, it's kind of weird, but at the same time, kind of good because I'd love to see Miami pick him up, being the Heat fan that I am. But, you know, we'll see. And that's pretty much all I got to say about that. Yeah.
I'd honestly be a little upset to see Dame leave Portland just because legacy-wise, there aren't too many players, especially NBA greats, that could say that they've spent all of their career on one team. I mean, even Paul Pierce ended up leaving the Celtics for Brooklyn back in the early 20 teens. But I would love to see Dame start and complete his career in Portland, regardless of whether or not that means winning a championship, because I think that's something that's even more rare than winning a championship, is spending your whole career with just that one team and having that real relationship with the town. Other than that, though, I know Jason Kidd was just signed to Dallas, which is going to be interesting because Jason Kidd was a pretty prolific point guard back in his day. So just to see if he can help elevate Luka's game. I mean, even if it can be elevated, I think one of the best things Dallas could do, though, in the offseason is just look to find like a supplemental star to Luka, because I don't think KP, with all of his injuries and his inconsistencies in production, is really going to cut it at the end of the day. Because I know Dallas, with Luka, they do have a superstar talent. And that's just something you got to look out for. I mean, they just got rid of Rick Carlisle, who ends up signing with Indiana, where I believe he started his coaching career in the NBA. Because Carlisle coached there for a while back in the 2000s. So it's just interesting to see all of these different moves. Now, does that make Indiana a contender? In my eyes, no. I don't think Indiana is really going to be going anywhere. It's just interesting to see. Of course, when Joel talks about KD and all these, historic playoff performances from the players that we've been seeing this year, it just feels good to finally watch the NBA. Last season didn't feel regular, especially in the bubble with the lack of fans. It didn't feel like a real NBA season. Now, I'm not calling that a Mickey Mouse championship by any means, but it was definitely different. So it almost feels like the NBA has come back to normalcy, and it could really be the league that we've all come to know and appreciate it as over the years.
I really can't imagine Dame leaving Portland, but I understand where he's coming from, because I think the league is kind of changing, and I think this offseason will be a huge offseason for everyone because of the beast that is Brooklyn. I think teams or players want to win games and honestly win a championship. Like Jimmy came to Miami to win a championship. I think if Dame leaves, he's going to go to a contender to win a championship. And I think more super teams are going to start to happen because of Brooklyn. And I think that everyone around the league knows that. And I think we're going to see a lot of really, really interesting team ups because people want to win. And it's going to be really hard to do that on the teams that they're on now.
I just wanted to chime in on the Dame situation. While I do agree that it's kind of remarkable when players decide to stay on one team for their entire career. But if Dame was to ever look back on his career and whether he stayed on one team or whether he would have won a championship, I think he would look back and be like, I would have rather just wanted to win a championship wherever he goes. Obviously, I'm against super teams, but he could go to other teams and not form a super team and win championships. And I feel like most players' dream is to win a championship. So if Portland can't get it done, I wouldn't blame him to leave, At the end, he has to do what's best for him. And maybe winning a championship is what he wants.
All right, up next, I'm going to tell you guys where the NBA playoff teams went wrong. Let's just start at the bottom of the standings just to see. Well, the Memphis Grizzlies, they did end up going against a number 1 seed. Great performances by Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks intensity. I just think they're a year or two away from being true title contenders and maybe one more star away. Whether or not you want to pair Ja up with one of the potential big free agents that could be coming up in this offseason, we'll see. The Los Angeles Lakers, I really don't see too many excuses for them. Apparently, LeBron James is playing on a high ankle injury. AD got injured. So injuries ended up taking them out, but it might have just been the proficiency of the Phoenix Suns as a basketball team that really ended up taking them out, because the Lakers were not really playing together as a full team because of the injuries to their 2 superstars down the stretch. The Portland Trailblazers, this man Dame needs help. And I know people keep on saying, oh, if Dame's a superstar, he could do it himself. Curry could do it, blah, blah, blah. No, Dame does need another superstar with him in Portland. CJ McCollum's not going to cut it. The contributions from Nurkic, Melo, they're just not enough to push them over the hump. I personally think that the Blazers should have beat the Nuggets in the first round, but even if they got to the second round, I'm not even sure if they could have taken down Phoenix. The Dallas Mavericks, very simply, Luka did everything he could, but again, he needs a little bit more help. He needs another star. They took the Clippers to 7. They had the opportunity to close it. They were up 2-0 in the series. I think that's what ultimately led to Carlisle's demise. It's that, if you're up 2-0 in a series, you got to learn how to close that. Clippers have now come back from being down 0-2 twice, and they might come back from being down 3-1. The Denver Nuggets, the obvious injury to Jamal Murray wasn't great for them. Phoenix Suns are still in it. And then the Utah Jazz, I just think with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, they're just not stars to me that really like pop. If they had like a great wing, some sort of two-way wing, I don't know. If you put Kawhi on the Jazz, I think that's a championship team. That's just all I have to say about that. In the Eastern Conference, we have the Washington Wizards, great backcourt with Beal and Westbrook, lack of efficiency. Plus, they went up against the juggernaut that was the Philadelphia 76ers, who are no longer in contention. The Boston Celtics, I mean, you know, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown got injured. It just wasn't a great postseason for them. I don't really know if I do see them contending next season either. I think some parts have to move around. I mean, Kemba's gone, so we'll see what happens there. The Miami Heat, who ended up making the finals the year prior, got bounced in the first round in 4 games by Milwaukee. I think it came down to star production. Jimmy Butler was definitely not, I would say he wasn't even half the player that he was last postseason. And I don't think it had anything to do with him physically or mentally. I just think that there was just some sort of miscommunication. The coaching didn't change. The roster didn't really change. You just need your stars to contribute more for you if you're Miami, and then you might be more successful next season. The Atlanta Hawks are still in it. Their stars have been contributing. They have a nice, young, fast core, great play, great fast break opportunities. And then we go to the New York Knicks. They made the 4th seed, surprisingly, against all odds. People were saying that they were going to be a lottery team. I just think that Julius Randle, if he didn't shrink in the playoffs, maybe they would have made it to the second round. So a lot of these Eastern Conference teams, it's not that they lack star power, but they need their star power to step up in those bigger moments. The Milwaukee Bucks escaped the second round by a shoe size, maybe 2 shoe sizes. But what the Bucks have that the Brooklyn Nets didn't is they had a little bit more health, a little bit more aggressiveness on the boards. I know the Nets didn't really fight for the boards that much, and they had their size too. So they're going to hopefully take that with them to the finals if they can. The Brooklyn Nets downfall, injuries. Not having Harden for a majority of the series was definitely killer. And then losing Kyrie for those last 3 games didn't help the Nets cause at all. The Philadelphia 76ers, I could say injuries too, but I'm just going to say one man's name, and you all know who it is. Ben Simmons needs a jumper. All I have to say. Out of these teams, who's contending next season? The Nets, probably. Sixers, probably. Bucks, probably. You could throw the Heat in there, and then maybe the Hawks, because they have made it this far. They'll get a little bit better. As far as out of the West, I don't think the Jazz are contenders. The Suns, probably. Nuggets, probably. Clippers, I'd say yes. Lakers are going to bounce back. And I'll throw the Mavericks and Trailblazers in there just for fun.
Right. You know, looking at some of these teams who got eliminated, I think there's some huge question marks with them. So, you know, looking at them real quick, I have Wizards. I mean, I don't think there's anything to worry about because Beal wants to waste his career there. So who cares? Knicks, on the other hand, they do have a bright future ahead of them. You know, being that attractive destination, one of the biggest fears is that a star will want to go there. You know, we'll see what happens. Miami, you know what? They ultimately had a very short off season, and there's the fact that they've dealt with injuries, along with the fact that Miami did not make really the wise choice in running it back. But I expect cutthroat Pat Riley to strike this offseason and to make the improvements that this team needs to make to get back to where they were last year. So there's that. Boston, on the other hand, you know, we'll see what goes on from there. I mean, they traded away Kemba, which was a good move for them, honestly. I need to see some more improvements from them. Yeah, I think the coaching change is interesting. And then let's see, you got Memphis. They got a bright future ahead of them. No sweat from there. And then you have Dallas. Kristaps Porzingis got to go. Nothing more you can say about that. Dallas, you got Portland. I mean, Dame just needs more help. Simple as that. Lakers also had a short off season. And then there was the injuries as well, especially with AD with that groin injury. I expect them to feel better heading into next season with the long off season they're currently having. And then looking into some of the other people who got eliminated, Philly, Ben Simmons, you know, I think he needs a fresh start. And I'm sure he'll get that with the Guangdong Tigers. So there you go, Ben. I wish you the best of luck with them. Then after that, you got Brooklyn. You know, I don't think they got much to worry about. If they just simply had a healthy team, they probably would have been in the conference finals, let alone probably win the championship. So no hassle there. And then you got Utah. I mean, Donovan Mitchell did the best he could. There's only so much you can do when you have a fraud defensive player of the year winner. So I give him props, you know. It's not that easy when you got a fraud on your team that fooled everyone into thinking he deserved a max contract like that. But that's for another story. That's for another discussion. And then last but not least, you know, Denver, they did the best they could, I guess. I mean, if they probably had Jamal Murray, the story probably would have been much different. You know, would they have still won the series? I don't think so, but it certainly would have been more competitive and would not have been a sweep. You know, I think if they just simply get Jamal Murray back and maybe make some additions in the offseason, they'll be good. But overall, that's basically all I got to say about the teams who got eliminated this year so far.
I just want to say Nets are frauds for scheming and teaming up just to never be able to play their big three together. And Bucks are even bigger frauds for almost losing to a team that never was able to play their big three together. That's all I want to say.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents about the whole situation. So in the semifinals, I'm going to start with the Western Conference. The Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns was a clean sweep. And for people to say, oh, that's not my MVP, oh, Jokic didn't deserve this, it's not Jokic's fault. He didn't have most of the assets that would have helped them go a little bit further. Would they have won it? I don't think so. But it would have been much more of a help if Jamal Murray was on the court and present to be able to help assist them, because he does make a big difference, believe it or not. I know it might not seem like it, but trust me, any valuable player or any player in general makes a difference on their team at least. And so I give the Phoenix Suns their flowers for making it as far as they would. I can't say I didn't expect it because of the team that they have, consisting of Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, all those other players. Did I expect them to go as far as they did? Yes and no, because I'm sure most people were rooting for the Lakers in the first round. But as for the other teams, if I'm concerned if they're going to make any moves, the Wizards, I'm not really too concerned about. If you were to tell me that the Wizards were going to win more games than the Heat, I would have told you you're full of it. But hey, here we are. The Sixers, I feel like with Ben Simmons, he needs out. Like Joel said, the Guangdong Tigers, the Shanghai Sharks, future destination for Ben Simmons. Yeah, Joel Embiid played on an injured knee, but regardless, he did what he could. Tobias Harris showed out. Matisse Thybulle, Jules and I's favorite Sixers player. It was unfortunate in Game 7. I hate to bring that up, but it is what it is again. The Heat and the Bucks. Well. If you were going to tell me that the team that was an NBA finalist were going to get swept by the team that nearly swept in the second round, who were also the first overall seed in the league, I would have said, no, you're crazy. But here we are. And it's not that the Heat got worse. The Bucks simply got better. And there's not much more I can say about that. They made the improvements that needed to be made. The Hawks and the Knicks, the Hawks are great where they're at. I can't really see them making any further improvements, to be honest. The Knicks, like Joel said, if Julius Randle would have showed out a bit more and got some more help, I think they would have done a little bit better. And like he also said, for them to be in the 4th seed was certainly a shocker for most fans, and I'm sure most Knicks fans as well, considering how bad they've been for so long, but that's none of my business. The Nets and the Celtics. The Nets, great where they're at. It's unfortunate how they got eliminated, but again, injuries play their role. That's just how basketball works. The Celtics, I don't really know what to say about them. Jason Tatum showed out as always. Kemba Walker's gone. He's in OKC now, but Kemba Walker had his games, I can say. Marcus Smart is average, I guess. Tristan Thompson is a joke. Evan Fournier, in my opinion, is low-key underrated, but I'm not going to speak too long on these topics. The Jazz and the Grizzlies. I low-key feel bad for Donovan Mitchell considering how far they went being the first overall seed and how they got eliminated in the bubble, which was also unfortunate. The Grizzlies, Ja Morant is a future superstar. He has what it takes to be one of the best. But for now, it's only his second year. I can't say, oh yeah, he's like a top 10 player now because, again, he's young. He has time to grow. The Suns and the Lakers, I already touched on that a bit. So I'm just going to, and I already touched on Denver and Portland. The Clippers and the Mavericks, the Clippers certainly proved the point. I can't say that. I personally didn't expect them to beat the Mavericks because Luka Doncic is just unreal. He's not from this planet. But Kawhi and Paul George did their thing, and it's unfortunate that Kawhi is injured, but Paul George is certainly making up for those lost minutes that Kawhi would put on the court. The Mavericks, Luka Doncic, it's been reported that he's not happy with the Mavericks' performance, considering that the season, like in the bubble, they also went out in a more unfortunate way. So I doubt he's going to leave because if he were to request a trade, it's just ridiculous packages. You'd probably have like a 3-man roster, if anything 5, but whatever. But Luka is just too high priced for him to get traded. But unless something comes around, then it is what it is. But for the next topic, I'm going to quickly touch on what I touched on before, the Miami Heat's unfortunate sweep. And as you know, this was a huge shocker for Heat fans and most fans across the country, considering, like I said, they were NBA finalist contenders. They really showed out in the postseason in the bubble. And I don't really believe in the term bubble fluke because everyone was in the same circumstances. And if the bubble was such a fluke, why didn't your team make it to the finals? But I'm not going to speak on that anymore. So what potential moves from via free agency, via trade, whatever the case may be, that you think that he could make in the potential role this offseason? Me personally, for pickups, some names floating around in the air would be Damian Lillard, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and John Collins. Personally, the one I'm a fan of the most is Kyle Lowry, and I'm sure any Heat fan can agree with me on that. And I feel the person that's going to push for this the most would be Jimmy, considering that's literally his best friend. That is his daughter's godfather. Kyle Lowry is Jimmy's daughter's godfather. So I feel like the chemistry with Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler would certainly contribute something on the court. And also, we need a true point guard. Kyle Lowry is an outstanding point guard for what he's done in Toronto. And I feel like he could really bring something beneficial to the table in Miami. Anything can happen. And another pickup I like the name is John Collins. Considering everything he's doing for Atlanta, I love his game. I respect it so much, and just everything. So what do you guys have to think about potential offseason pickups for Miami?
I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of moves the Heat can make, but while we can hit on that because there is a lot, but there's some other questions that are revolving around players, such as guys like Colin Sexton and all them in trade talks and all that. I want to see who in the league would want to make a move for him. And then also, like, all jokes aside, but then you look at other trade targets like Porzingis and Simmons, where they could go. Would they want to move on from them to make their stars happy? But, the free agency market, to be honest, I'm not really huge of it because at the end of the day, I mean, let's look at our free agents this offseason. I mean, you have Kyle Lowry, and it does look like he might go to the Heat if he decides to leave Toronto. So there's that. I mean, who are other names out there? There's
Lonzo Ball is a restricted free agent, but I think he wants to leave.
Yeah, that will also be an interesting one. Regarding his destinations, I mean, I know his father, I mean, he wants him to probably go to a place where he could probably compete, in the playoffs. Regarding where he goes, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of questions regarding that New Orleans team. I know some people have already been flirting with the idea of trading Ingram, but there's that. And then let's see. There's also some big role players that are free agents as well in the NBA. And I think that is something interesting to look at because if you're a team that's trying to build a contender, there's some good names out there. I mean, let's see. You have Carmelo Anthony. Regarding if he wants to stay in Portland, I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting, though, because let's see. He's right now, you're 37 years old. Do you want to compete for a championship? That's the decision that Carmelo needs to make. And then you have other guys as well, like Nicholas Batum. I think he could be a good stretch for whoever. So that's a name to look out for. Then some of these other guys, I know for the Heat, you have Kendrick Nunn. I don't think he will stay with Miami. So I'm sure there might be a team out there that would be willing to give him the bag. So let's see what happens. DeMar DeRozan, too, is another big name as well. I really don't know what that guy is going to do. I know some people have hyped up the idea of him going to the Knicks or something like that. Oladipo, I'm very curious with him. All I know is he's not getting a max contract. Apparently, someone said that he still wants a max, but to have done what he did, well, not what he did, but still to have dealt with what he dealt with this year, specifically with that season-ending surgery, I just don't see a team that's willing to take a risk and give him that type of money. So unfortunately for Vic, I think he will have to take much less money. Yeah, and then looking at other names, I mean, Andre Drummond, I guess, if anyone's interested in a Hassan Whiteside 2.0, I'm sure there is a team desperate enough for him. So we'll see what happens there. And yeah, that's all I got to say.
I just want to add more names. Obviously, you mentioned DeMar DeRozan. I don't know if you would want to re-sign with the Spurs. They weren't doing much. They didn't get anywhere. And I'm sure he's getting older. He probably wants a championship, so I could see him leaving. There's also Dinwiddie. He declined the option to stay with the Nets. I'm thinking he feels like he could get more money than that. So either the Nets are going to give him that, and they're working on a new contract, or he's talking to other teams and going there. There's also players like PJ McConnell, Schroeder. I remember Schroeder said that he wanted to stay with the Lakers, but it's just going to depend on what they're offering him. I remember he declined an option to get around 20 mil, which was a mistake in my opinion, because he didn't show up for the playoffs. So we'll see what he does with that. There's also Derrick Rose. I see him staying with the New York Knicks only because he was such an essential part of their lineups, especially in the playoffs. And, Thibodeau loves him. And there's also PJ Tucker, but I know he's probably likely resigning with the Bucks. Jeff Green is a interesting option because while he seems to be very important for the Nets, even Miami could be someone that could be interested in him. And he's a good player to have next to someone like Bam. And I'm sure other players have that same need to be filled, just like the Lakers. They probably need a big as well. There's players like McConnell. I remember he was talking to I think it was the Mavs, and he wanted to go there. There's Porzingis. He didn't play well in the playoffs, and there was some rumors about the Mavs wanting to put him on the trading block. But he has a big contract, so we'll see what they do with that, especially to keep Luka happy. There's players like Miles Turner, Jarrett Allen, and Enes Kanter. These are like the bigs that are gonna, and Drummond. Those are like the bigs that are gonna get a lot of looks. There's also Ibaka, who was injured for the Clippers. He might stay. I mean, let's just see what they do with him. But yeah, and there's also the Brandon Ingram theory. I mean, the Pelicans have a lot of moves that they might be making as they need to build around Zion. And players like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo are movable pieces that they might consider moving, as they might not fit well with Zion. So, and there's also Tim Hardaway Jr., who might be moving as well.
There's just one name, because I know we've mentioned a lot of names in the potential free agents and moves this offseason. Kawhi Leonard has a player option. Now, whether or not he leaves the Clippers is still up in the air. I think that the Clippers kind of exceeded expectations and did end up making it to the conference finals this year, so he has a pretty good chance of staying with them. However, if Kawhi Leonard does decide to leave, I think there are a couple of good landing spots for him. Like if he, for some reason, ends up on the New York Knicks, they become a contender. If he ends up with the Miami Heat, they become even more of a contender. If he gets to Atlanta, like that's a contender. There are a lot of teams that could really use the type of play that Kawhi Leonard provides, being a two-way wing with his mid-range and three-point expertise. So it's just something to look for. If Kawhi doesn't end up moving, to me, this free agency thing is going to be pretty much a dud unless Damian Lillard ends up getting traded. So, Kawhi Leonard is a name that you guys really should be watching out for.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously I got biased towards this, but, if he went to Miami, that big three with him, Jimmy, and Bam, like, could you even imagine the defense on that team? it would just be insane. And like, regarding what he does, I mean, we honestly don't know. I mean, there was a report that came out saying that he wasn't happy with the way how the Clippers have been handling everything going on with this injury. Now, keep in mind, this report came from Skip Bayless, so take that as you will. But if he's on the point at that point where he wants to leave and go to another team, I do think Miami could be that destination for him, because I do think if you go there, you can compete with Brooklyn and, most definitely probably win a championship. So we'll see what he decides to do with that.
I think when it comes to Kawhi, it's just gonna depend on whether he wants to put his family first and just stay in LA, or if he's more willing to move for a championship. I mean, they did get to the Western Conference Finals without him, so that might have some say on whether he stays. I mean, if he wasn't injured, they could have been in the finals. So I still think the Clippers have a shot at winning championships for years to come if he's healthy. So it's just gonna depend, and I really feel like he will at the end just pick to stay in LA because that's been his home. He went there for a reason. So
yeah, I mean, that Raptors team was stacked when you look back at it. And the fact that he chose to leave, I think that tells you a lot about how he felt about LA. So I'd honestly be shocked if he left, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Kawhi Leonard, as far as NBA history goes, he's the first Finals MVP to actually leave his team after winning the Finals with them. So even if the Clippers do win the Finals, I mean, the last time he won the Finals, he ended up leaving the team. It's a little bit of a different situation because it's a lot closer to where he grew up. But I just think it would completely shake up the league if Kawhi did end up leaving the Clippers.
right, but that kind of shows you that even with just winning a championship, even a championship couldn't make him stay. I really feel like LA is just his home, and that is the exact reason why he left. And unless they really mess up and make him angry, I mean, maybe with the medical stuff, but I don't think that's enough. And with the way the Clippers have been playing, I mean, if they were to get knocked out earlier, maybe that would have convinced him to leave. But because they have been playing as well as they have with Reggie Jackson and Terrence Mann, they have a lot of potential to get even better than what they are right now. And I feel like Kawhi sees that, and I could see him staying.
And I'm pretty sure Kawhi Leonard also wanted to be in LA on the Clippers, so it wouldn't make sense for him to want to leave the team he's been trying to get on for a little bit. I mean, he's doing great where he's at now with LA, with him and Paul George.
Yeah, with the Clippers, I just heard rumblings towards the end of the season and in the first couple rounds, first couple games of the playoffs against Dallas, there was a little bit of discontent between Rondo and Kawhi and the coaching staff. So it's not like everything's all, puppies and rainbows in LA. There's some tension there. And honestly, they're probably going to choose Kawhi over Rondo. But if there was more tension between Kawhi and the other players, you could see some sort of parting with that. But I think for the most part, he's probably going to stay in LA. Would I like to see him leave and go somewhere and shake up the league completely? 100%.
What do you guys think about this notion that Kawhi is not this like leadership type player, and how that could impact how well the Clippers?
I don't agree with it personally because clearly he's been the main one leading the Clippers where they are right now. Although he is injured, Paul George has been, like I said earlier, he's been filling in those empty minutes and making up for the lost time on the court that Kawhi Leonard has not been present. But I really do contribute a lot of the success, the Clippers' success, because of Kawhi Leonard and just how much of a dominant player he truly is and how far he's brought them to where they are now. And
no, he's definitely he's definitely a dominant player, but they were talking more in terms of leadership and like being vocal around the locker room and things like that. Something LeBron does very well. He's very motivated when it comes to the playoffs, and he kind of instills that in all his players, and they haven't really seen that with Kawhi, and then they want to know if that's going to impact Clippers' success for the future.
Well, Kawhi is a very quiet player. He keeps a lot of stuff to himself, but that's his business, not mine. But I feel like the way he operates on the court or off the court, I feel like all this talk about him not being a true leader to the Clippers just can motivate him to prove everyone wrong and be like, hey, I'm one of the main contributors on this team. I'm the one that contributes a lot of the success. So I feel like that can just motivate him to do even better and just to prove everyone that's bringing him down wrong, essentially. But yeah, he's just he works in mysterious ways. I'll give him that. So that's, if people think he has a communication issue, then that's the reason why.
Yeah, I would
Kawhi
love
is
to
one of
see
the
him
most-
be even more vocal.
Most unconventional superstars I've seen in the NBA. And I think, Lola, to your point, he's not really the archetype of a leader, sort of that LeBron James or Chris Paul in the locker room. He's more quiet and reserved. And I think he kind of leads by example and by his play on the court. And I think not only that, but his game does a lot of the talking. So, you know, when you talk about Kawhi, just the historic run he had with the Raptors, the 45 points, you know, to down Luka in Game 6. I mean, it's just some fantastic stuff that Kawhi Leonard's been doing. He's just an absolute monster.
No, I agree. But we've seen like the success that LeBron and Chris Paul has had playing that leadership role and making everyone else play better by doing so. I just hope, I see Paul George kind of do that now that Kawhi is injured. I would love to see Kawhi be more vocal, but I understand that that's the player he is, and I still enjoy watching him play.
Yep. All right. So I think that we've touched upon everything that we wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed. And as for the All NBA team presented by the Courtside View, this is us signing off. Thanks for listening.